Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health webcast, Safety Made Simple with Mobile Forms, Devices, and the Cloud, sponsored by Pronto Forms. This is Alan Ferguson, Associate Editor with Safety and Health magazine, and I will moderate today's session. Thank you all for joining us. We'll start the presentation in a few minutes, but first, I want to go over some preliminary items. The views of today's speaker and organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not mean the council or magazine endorses those items. At the end of today's webcast, we will conduct a question and answer session. To ask a question, simply type it in the text box in the lower left-hand corner of your screen and click the button for Submit Question. Feel free to ask your question at any time during the presentation. You don't have to wait for the question and answer session to begin. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but because of the large number of participants today, we might not get to every question. Any unanswered questions will be forwarded to today's speaker. For basic troubleshooting information, click the Help button located on your screen. At the end of the webcast, you'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey. I will let you know more about that after the presentation. This webcast is archived, so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, go to safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Our speaker today is Mark Scott, who brings more than 20 years of marketing experience. He has developed and managed marketing strategies and projects for several companies and institutions, including Rolls-Royce Aerospace and the Canadian Space Agency. Mark has written articles on the topic of mobile apps in the cloud for Forbes magazine, as well as white papers for smartphone companies, including Apple and Samsung. Also joining us as a guest is Glen Wanamaker, Training and Product Manager of U.S. Service at Marcor, a Cantel medical company. Mark, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the intro. So big thank you to all the people who joined. I see we've got not only a sizable audience, but a very diverse audience from different types of organizations. So we're going to do our best to make it crisp, meaningful, and we're hoping that you're going to take away some information that's going to help you in your job as a safety professional. So quick overview of the agenda. Going to do a short introduction in terms of who we are, what we're all about, who's co-sponsoring this webinar along with us. Then we're going to look at some pretty interesting data. We're very lucky as an organization that we participate in a survey. It's our third year doing this survey, and we generally have somewhere between 450 to 500 environmental health and safety professionals participating in this survey. And it's all about the adoption of contemporary technology to help them meet compliance goals. How do they do their jobs better? By leveraging mobile devices, applications, the cloud, and analytics. And I think you're going to find some of that data quite striking and interesting, and we're, as I said, hoping you find it useful. We're going to look a little bit about our solution and how it works collaboratively with our sponsors and our partners. I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And then we're going to talk about how we fit into your overall objectives as an environmental health and safety professional. So there are certain areas where our expertise is very valuable, and there are certain areas where we don't necessarily play, but you'll see from a solution perspective, I'm very confident you're going to see yourself in terms of how we discuss leveraging this technology to your benefit. And then probably the most important part of our webinar is we've had the great fortune of having customers participate and talk about their experiences introducing these types of technologies to help them meet their compliance goals. So we've had companies like Pacific Gas and Electric, we've had Halliburton, we've had large mechanical services companies, really diverse groups of different companies in different areas. And today we're super lucky to have Glen Wanamaker with Marcor, which is part of the Cantel Medical Group. So now, just timing-wise, so people appreciate, and I know a lot of people are interested in hearing, someone who's very much like them, which will be Glen, talk about his experiences. I'm going to try and get through the first section leading up to the interview in, say, the first 20, 25 minutes. And we're going to spend about 20 to 25 minutes with Glen, and then we're going to keep some time for Q&A at the end. All right, so let's jump into it. So I always start off with this slide because people are probably, we don't have the brand of, let's say, a Coca-Cola, as you can imagine. So people want to understand what we do. So Pronto Forms is the leader in automating mobile workflows, and we're going to talk about what that means. And often our audiences are not overtly technical people. So as we go through the slides, I'll make that more meaningful to you from, really showing in a workflow graph, how do we empower you to really collect data in a better way, but then also leverage that data to make you and your organization more compliant as well as safe. There's an old saying that you can tell a lot about people by the company they keep, who are their friends, who are their partners. As an organization, we're very lucky to have companies large and small that trust us. They trust our team, they trust our technology, they trust our solution. So I've named a few companies. By all means, you'll go to our website and you'll see that we have very strong advocacy from our customers who want to tell their stories. And I will be shocked if you can't find a company that's a lot like yourselves in those case studies as well as those videos. And equally important to customers is partners. And we have the greatest partners in the world. Co-sponsoring this webinar with us today is Apple. Apple's a brand that everyone knows and loves. So Apple, we're part of something that was launched a couple of years back called the Apple MPP program. So that's the Mobility Partner Program. And it's all about working collaboratively with Apple. And Apple hand-selected a few key partners and working collaboratively with Apple to communicate how our software works in conjunction with iOS beautiful devices like the iPad as well as iPhone to improve overall productivity for people working in the field, but also mission-critical job functions within organizations like compliance related to, could be medical compliance, could be environmental health safety compliance. And Box. So Box is also part of the Mobility Partner Program. Again, one of those hand-selected few companies, best of breed, and we are very proud to work with Box. It's a great partnership. And it's not just saying, hey, you can use Box and Pronto Forms. These are deeply integrated solutions and capabilities. So Box and Pronto Forms work in a way to maximize the power of iOS devices, but also we work in a deeply integrated way to provide the seamless connectivity to make your tasks out in the field as well as in the office work much better. All right, so survey results. So as I mentioned, just a few slides, 4 or 5 slides on this topic. And by all means, please feel free to go to our website. You'll easily find our full survey report, which, if I'm not mistaken, is around 26, 27 pages. And there's a lot more detail than I'm going to go through. I'm just going to show you a couple of key findings here. But please do feel free to go see what approximately 500 of your peers are doing when it comes to adopting technology. And what's nice about the surveys, you can see a cross-section in terms of size of organizations, types of industries. Are they in manufacturing? Are they in the energy industry? So I do encourage you to go take a look. So what did we find? And I think something that was very telling for us is that here we are in 2017, and 78% of your peers regrettably are using very outdated methods to manage safety tasks. And when we talk about managing safety tasks, you'll see it's not just the data collection perspective. It's also, as everyone on this call knows, collecting the data is just one part of being ensuring that your organization is compliant, but also having ready access to that data and being able to use it in an actionable way. So a way that you can either respond to an audit, a way that you can demonstrate to customers or partners or regulatory officials that you are compliant when that information is called upon. And in many cases, from a compliance perspective, you have to actively share that data once you collect it. So sometimes having that paper in a filing cabinet doesn't make it the easiest way to get that data to the key stakeholders. Another thing that we've found working with customers in this space, as well as understanding challenges that they've faced, is the world changes. The world changes rapidly. So you may have service level agreements, SLA agreements related to compliance, or regulations may change, or you may be introducing a new piece of equipment into your manufacturing environment or into the field. And with that comes a whole new series of ways that you have to do site inspections, pre-equipment startups, and new regulations related to where you have to file and share that information. And I'm guessing, I found the 57% to be quite low. I'm guessing it's, a lot of people on this call are probably thinking, hey, this is one of the things in my world where things change all the time. And the last thing in the world I need is people using outdated methods because of potential liability and or health and safety risks to employees and or customers or partners. So even though things change quite rapidly, only 13% of the organizations that that participated in the survey actually had a way to distribute in an automatic way and a way to authenticate and ensure that people out in the field were using the new processes. It's got to be terrifying. These are, these are probably some of the slides that most of the people on the call, if they wake up at 3 a.m. with a bit of the sweats, thinking, "Oh my God, is my team using the most up-to-date, forms that I've published related to this new equipment that we put out in the field?" Outside of personally visiting every single site location, the day that equipment goes live, often you have to trust that there are people. It could be equipment operators, it could be field site supervisors, shift supervisors that are carrying out these tasks for you. Sometimes they think they're doing a great job for the environment by using the old form. Hey, why should I've got like a box load in my pickup truck? Why should I use the old form? That's not being very green. I'm not going to use the new forms till I run out of the old forms. In many cases, they don't understand the repercussions, and you may only find out, after regrettably something wrong happens, that they were using the wrong processes. And again, I know that 99.9% of the people on this webinar probably have an iPad on their desk right next to them and an iPhone in their pocket. Yet, shockingly enough to us, only 14% of almost 500 of these organizations interviewed had deployed a mobile application to help them meet compliance, as well as to track where they are from a compliance perspective. So again, we, and I'll use that analogy because I think it's a great, example, is that we have our iPhone, we expect instant access to our favorite music, our favorite photos that are in the cloud. When we're out for dinner with friends, we want to show them a picture that we took on holidays, so we go and we look, hey, I'll sort my pictures and look, at the album by geography, and hey, this is when I was in Mexico, here's some family pictures. Instant access to information on a mobile device, yet, probably one of the most important tasks for an organization is ensuring compliance. And as I said, it could be health, safety, it could be environmental compliance, it could be regulatory compliance. yet only 14% of the organizations are using state-of-the-art equipment that's readily available today. So a bit of a shocker for us. But good news is that this is easily done. The good news is you do not have to reinvent the wheel. The good news is we have domain expertise in areas, right across the gamut for companies large and small. This is not our first rodeo, if you wish. We've helped many companies, big and small, take the step to get this done. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the solution and how it works and this change management and how that's crucial to success. But regardless of what you need to do, and I have some examples there, I'm not going to read through them, but if they're, job safety analysis or hazard assessments, if you believe that you've got a custom requirement that is unique and different, it's okay. The platform, as well as this integrated capability that we have with iOS, as well as Box, as you're going to see very shortly, allow us to get you set up very rapidly and take advantage of being able to demonstrate to your peers, to your executive committee, to anyone who's a key stakeholder in getting access to this information, that you are meeting your objectives. So a lot of people on this call, and I've used the term safety process here, but in many cases it could be a compliance process. But in essence, these are, I would say, the foundations of the infrastructure for your program, right? Which include planning, training, tracking, and then remediation when you do find any type of issues, and then safety prevention, and of course compliance reporting. Some people will use different words or different flow, but generally I feel very comfortable. The most part, people on this webinar are looking at that and saying, that's my world. Okay, so where do we play? So it's important to understand that Pronto Forms is a platform company. We're a technology company, just like Apple is, just like Box is. We provide this technology to allow you to do your job better. We're not going to develop and define your safety program. So you do that on your own, or there are phenomenal safety consultants and resources out there and companies that can help you define your planning as well as your program requirements as well as training. That's not the area where we play. Where we play is in the execution. And what we found, as you've seen in the survey, this is where the wheels fall off the proverbial truck, if you wish, is that companies invest a lot of time into the planning, the training, but the ability to track and then rapidly respond and remediate against issues, and then by modifying processes, be very nimble in ensuring that they're preventing any types of issues related to compliance, and then being able to very rapidly and easily report. That's where people, because they're using outdated methods, organizations often are looking for help. Good news is we're here. So we're going to look at this, and this last point here, this is a continuous learning cycle. So, and I think this slide really tells the story in a great way. So we're kind of looking at it in a different view, but it's this view of, hey, if you start at the top at 12 o'clock, if you wish, you have some safety checks and audits that you have to, execute and handle in the field. If you do find any issues, you've got to take some remediative action. Of course, preventive action, so these things are not repeated. So you've learned from it, so you can modify how things are handled in the field. Those are the changes we've talked about and you're very familiar with. And then, planning, you can plan to basically, to ensure that these same type of issues don't happen again, right? So now, if you layer in our technology, and when I talk about our technology, I'm talking again about Pronto Forms, I'm talking about Box, and I'm talking about iOS devices. So just think, you've got people out in the field who are doing work out in the field, collecting information. They're basically collecting information. They're, from our perspective, using the iOS platform out in the field. They have Pronto Forms on the device, and they can connect information that's stored in Box to that device, so they can have the latest, greatest information related to either site locations, teams that are working in the field, addresses that they need to go to. And anytime that data needs to change, it can actually happen in the cloud, and it automatically updates in the field. I was a bit quick on the trigger there, but then you've got essentially records management. So we basically work collaboratively and integrate the solution with our solution, Pronto Forms, with Box. What does that mean? Is that you can have reports go to stakeholders, and those stakeholders can be different individuals back in the office. They could be business partners. They could be regulatory authorities. And you can set up a whole series of layered contextual reporting methods and share that information in a very clean and elegant way with Box. Next is sometimes you've got to basically take remediative action, and you need to set up workflows. So an example will be a site checklist where, let's say, a piece of equipment is non-compliant, and that person out in the field working with their iPad, they've basically taken a photo of the piece of equipment, they've gone through a pre-set up checklist, and they found that it needs some servicing. But this servicing is quite urgent because it is a possible compliance risk, so it could be a health and safety issue. You can create a workflow where information is distributed to certain key stakeholders via Box, but you can also complement that workflow by moving that information to other types of cloud systems. You can create contextual notifications via SMS. And I'm going to show you one more slide that kind of jumps into that in a little bit more detail. And then data analytics. This is the way where not only, and it reinforces the key of, it's not only ensuring that you're using the most up-to-date information and forms out in the field to collect information to ensure you're compliant. It's not only ensuring that that information from a records management perspective is available to people when and where they need it, or from a workflow perspective, automatically routed to key stakeholders so they have it at their fingertips when and where they need it. But it's also leveraging that data with analytics to ensure and track and identify issues where you may not be compliant. And that can be done at a national level by layering this data onto a map. It can be done at a regional level, a work group level, a site location. It can be done down to an employee level to see who's compliant, who's not. So very powerful ways to slice and dice that data, and very powerful ways for you to demonstrate not only to partners or regulatory authorities, but of course to your peers and your executive chain to say, hey, here's a daily dashboard that shows real-time live where we're compliant and where we have issues that we're taking, remedial action to respond to any non-compliance issues. So, we're pretty much on time here, so I'm just going to very quickly, and I don't want to overwhelm you with this, but the reason I'm showing you this slide is that a lot of people, when they hear about mobile forms on a beautiful iPad or iPhone, they think of an interactive PDF, and it's so much more than this. It's the ability for your people to be out in the field, to have vital information from the office that can be stored in the cloud and updated, as I said, and that could be information that is key to them doing their job in the field in the most productive way possible, or ensuring that if there have been latest, greatest changes that have happened just this morning, and you update either forms with new requirements related to, let's say, a safety inspection, as soon as you publish that, that information is immediately available. And again, as I mentioned, with our great partner Box, real simple, no-code, point-and-click integration allows you to manage key elements of your business, so site location, CRM information, price lists, parts lists, employee lists, costs, you name it, all from the cloud in a very simple way in a Excel spreadsheet. And whenever that information is updated, it's automatically updated with the devices of your team out in the field. Of course, we have lots of different customers using our solution in lots of different ways. So some have IoT triggers that trigger a work order to a technician out in the field or a site location inspection that needs to be done. And ultimately, that person out in the field has to begin their work. And as you can see, that three-layered approach, there's really a key element of what they're doing. If they're doing a safety inspection, and this is one example of a workflow, we can create unlimited workflows. It's very easy to configure how information flows and connects to different types of cloud solutions and or triggers in a contextual way, notifications to, key people on your team. And those notifications can be done, as I said, by, moving a file to a Box folder. It can be an SMS, it could be an email. Really, it's an easy way for you to configure how you want to handle it. So in this case, you've got a safety inspector. He has a pass-fail inspection. If all is good, green light. Safety manager gets a copy of the PDF. Great, all's good. If it's a fail, you can basically trigger an approval workflow. And that you can see there can be remediation from a technician and or there can be a significant, immediate action that needs to be taken, like let's say a site location has to be shut down because of a compliance issue. Team's going to want to know about it immediately and react immediately. And of course, that data can be stored very seamlessly in Box, but also reports and dashboards can be shared and then distributed in an easy way in the cloud with, again, our partner Box. So, last key point, and I've got maybe a couple of minutes over before we jump into the interview with Glen. Apologize if I was a bit verbose there, but so just a little call out to our friends at Apple who really, as I mentioned, it's a phenomenal partnership. We feel honored that they, we are hand selected by Apple and the great confidence they have in our technology and our team, and for me to, speak to all of you and talk about our relationship with Apple. So what really makes Apple unique with their devices out in the field? User experience. I think one of the great things with Pronto Forms and Box is working very closely with Apple's state-of-the-art R&D and UX or user experience design lab. I'll speak for ourselves specifically. No one on this webinar will question that Apple is the pinnacle of user experience and ease of use. They participated in helping modernize with our R&D team the whole user experience of our application. So of course, both Pronto Forms and Box are designed to not only maximize the integrated capabilities with iOS, but also make the solution very easy to use and be easily adopted by people out in the field. Security out of the box. Apple has a phenomenal reputation from a security perspective. And that security does not impede in any way, shape, or form usability. So security doesn't block usability. It just enforces that you've got the latest, greatest capabilities out there, and you can rest assured that you've got hardware encryption, and you've basically, you can tunnel data from the device to the cloud, as well as for the technical people out there, you've got sandboxing of apps on the device as well. So very secure platform to work from. One OS to manage, meaning, hey, we know some customers have a mix of iOS and Android and different types of devices, and but what we've seen is a growing majority. Already, the majority of our users are on iOS, that majority grows more rapidly year by year. And of course, it's much easier to manage when you're all on one platform. And then, of course, from an ecosystem perspective, what better example than this, where we're talking to you about this integrated capability with Box and Pronto Forms. So, all right, Glen, just double check that you can hear me fine and your audio is good.
Can you hear me?
I can. So, Glen, big welcome to you. As I said, this is where customers generally, after they hear the marketing guy talk, they want to hear the real guy out in the field who's using the solution. Yeah. So, hey, Glen, if you don't mind, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and your role. What do you do with Marcor?
Yeah, thanks again, Mark, for giving me the opportunity to share a little testimony here with your audience here. My name's Glen Wanamaker. I'm with a company called Marcor Purification. We have approximately 30 offices located across the country, and we manufacture, install, and service medical ROs of reverse osmosis for our hospitals, labs, pharma, and currently right now we're in approximately 90% of the dialysis market in the United States. And our equipment is designed to produce high purity water. We're a growing business. So currently right now we have approximately 100 service techs out in the field, 50 sales reps covering ranges between pharmaceutical, medical, industrial, and commercial sales, and then we have approximately 35 installers that will be installing new equipment at customers' locations.
Glen, I'm not sure if you can still hear me. Seems like we lost you.
I can.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, you just, maybe it was on my side, but yep. Okay, great. So, did I cut you off there? Sorry if I did.
That's okay.
Okay, so Glen, just thanks for the intro. And hey, so Glen, maybe you can talk to, so it's obvious, and I think that's very compelling for the people on the call here, is that your world is a highly regulated world. And so you were tasked with, taking the leap of moving away from, let's say some processes that you were probably doing in a manual way, maybe some outdated methods and you knew that there was a better way. So maybe can you talk a little bit about some of the operational processes and challenges that you were facing and what did that look like? What was your motivation and, what did that initial, step into this world look like?
Well, one of the things, Mark, is we currently, we're highly regulated by the FDA, considering that we're a medical device manufacturer. So that really requires us to be held accountable the FDA standards. Along with that, one of the focuses on our business model is customer experience. Providing a much better customer experience. And we're kind of behind the 8 ball with technology, so a lot of our processes are very manual and paper-based, which, at the end of the day, we're staying compliant with the FDA, but it becomes a challenge with all the paper handling and so forth. Plus, it really doesn't lend well to a positive customer experience with the inefficiencies of paper. So that has been really one of the leading pushes of us, finding a solution that would be able to encompass some of the requirements, some of the compliance requirements that we have. And that is when we found Pronto Forms, and so far it's been fantastic.
Hey, Glen. So, like you and I, we spoke last week just to kind of learn a bit more one-on-one some of the different areas. And I think the people on the webinar would probably be interested in some of the examples. I think the equipment preventative maintenance was probably quite a significant jump for you guys to move that to mobile devices in the cloud. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the challenges and what did that look like? What did that rollout look like?
With the preventative maintenance, I'm assuming you're speaking about the request for quote?
Yeah, that was the one. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that we saw that we were missing, we're leaving a lot of opportunities on the table when our service techs were going out performing service request orders and servicing the customer. And what we did was we developed a program really centered around utilizing Pronto forms as the main tool, given our service techs the ability to go in when they're visiting a site doing a job and they notice an issue with equipment or the water room that they're working in, something that has to do with it could be a pump that would be making a noise that the customer may not really notice, but our service tech would be able to pick up on that. And they would be able to use Pronto forms to document the problem, and they would be able to estimate how many hours, man hours, travel time, parts, cost, and so forth. And they would be able to fill that all out, take a picture. If there is an issue, they can take a photograph of the problem area. And when they submit it, it would then go through and be submitted to their manager, which then the manager approves it and then passes it on to our quoting coordinator, which then would generate a quote and give it to the customer. Now, what this does is this is a great opportunity for Marcor to increase our sales, but it's also providing a customer experience, letting the customer know that we're trying to help you prevent a problem now that could be very inexpensive to fix, to where if you let it go, it could become a very costly expense down the road in a number of factors. So this is a way to be preventative and also increasing our ancillary sales, which we've seen a significant increase in that.
Phenomenal. So I think that's, and that's actually a great point to touch on, is that because our solution is designed, to be, let's say, portable, if you wish, or usable across different types of business processes and tasks, is that it allows you to use it for compliance-related, requirements, but also by, improving operational capabilities. It also can help the organization, from a productivity perspective as well as a growth perspective. I think another example I think that we had discussed, which I think for this audience would probably be very interesting because it's related to the AAMI standards related to the carbon tanks, right? So that was the empty bed contact time calculator. That would probably be interesting. Yeah. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah. So I think one of the small features, it's a very small feature within Pronto forms, but we found some value in it with terms of utilizing the calculator. One of the things that we're kind of mandated to make sure that our water and our water systems meet AMI standards, which is the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation. And all of dialysis industry is really regulated by AMI standards. So one of the things that within those standards is when we're setting up, let's say in the pre-treatment, there's you're going to have multimedia tanks, you're going to have a water softener, and then you're going to have carbon tanks. And when we're setting up and rebedding a carbon tank, meaning taking the old carbon out, the used expired carbon, and replacing it with fresh carbon, we had to run water through those tanks for a certain period of time to meet those AAMI standards. So there's a formula that AAMI has put out that we should follow. And up until now, their field service techs were basically just using a spreadsheet or manual calculator or what have you, if they know the formula to use. So what we did was just using Pronto Forms, we created a simple empty bed contact time calculator. So then they can plug in the number of tanks, the volume of barbon, and so forth, and then that then comes back to them with how long they need running fresh water through those tanks. And it's something simple, but it's been effective, and a lot of the guys really are thankful that we're giving them a quick and easy solution to manage that.
Excellent. Hey, so Glen, also related to FDA regulatory requirements, I think I know for a fact that document control, availability, as well as formatting is paramount to being compliant and, of course, being able to prove your compliance. So maybe if you could maybe talk a little bit about our integration with Box and how you guys are using that from a doc control perspective, that would be, again, I think something the audience would be very interested to hear about.
Well, with regards to the FDA requirements on document control, one of the things that, all the formatting, just the formatting of our forms need to be documented and part numbered. So when looking for an electronic solution, we needed to find a solution that would enable us to be able to generate custom outputs so that the output of, after a user submits the form and it generates that PDF output, it has to match the already approved doc controlled formatting. So Pronto Forms has been very, effective in matching the same look and feel and maintaining that level of accuracy. Utilizing Box, the way that we've used Box.com is we use Box as a place to hold our data source for the form. So we created a data file that has all of our users listed by their employee number, their manager's email address, service coordinator information that's associated with that office, and so forth. So when a user is filling out the form, they put in their employee number. Now it automatically knows how to route that submission. So once the user submits it, the manager of that individual will get that submission, or whoever we want it to be. The nice thing is all I need to do is I update that file. I just update that file. I can either update it within Box using their, the browser part of their app, or I can just re-upload an updated version of that file, and it's all automatic at that point. And that's been a real effective way of maintaining that. And one thing I didn't mention to you, Mark, when we spoke, was also have been generating, we've been working on a form, a compliance certificate form that basically a customer can call us up and say, hey, I know you're going to have such and such tech coming in to service the equipment in our hospital or our pharma company, and I need some proof of their experience or their certification of working on this piece of equipment. So what we're doing is up until now, it's all been paper-based, and what we did was we generated a Pronto form that allows the manager to check off their certification on variation of different pieces of equipment. We've got probably about 40 different pieces of equipment that someone can actually have some certification in. So when they fill that information out and submit it, it generates an official-looking document, almost like a certificate that we can now present to the customer, and it's all branded and it looks great. But what it does also is it's submitting that data into the box file that we have sitting on box. It's a separate data file, which now when that service tech gets certified in a new procedure or of equipment, when the manager logs in, all the historical data is there. Now they can now update or add additional data to that file, then resubmit it, and then it saves it again and generates a brand new certificate with the updated information. So what it's doing is it's pulling in data from the data file, and it's adding and it's feeding data to the data file, which is all it's all sitting right on box. So that's been something that we haven't released it yet because there's things on our end that we need to kind of nail down and complete. But Box has been pretty useful in managing that data source.
All right, Glen, you're the workflow king, my man. That's a great story. This is great. Like, I love these conversations because we learn things that we hadn't known yet in terms of, because you can create these workflows and these abilities to, interact with people in the field, by leveraging the cloud and the devices out in the field, and just that instantaneous ability to route and or update, information in a very contextual way. What you described is beautiful, and that's a great example of this, how we work with Box and Pronto. This is great. Hey, one last question. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Did you have something to add there? Sorry.
One quick thing too. I mean, but with utilizing Box and Pronto forms and the whole workflow of how we're using these forms, one of the things that I do is I'll lay out using Visio. I kind of lay out the whole flow, from the point of, when we're planning, we do a lot of pre-planning in the process of, before we contact you guys or we go in and build a new form. And I mean, there's a whole list of items in the back end that we put it, thought into. So we really plan these forms out so that when we do launch and also in development phase, we try and make it as efficient and painless as possible. So really the pre-planning is, on my mind is really vital. So, but that really lets us and points out where it shines a light on where we might have a hole, and before we get into it, before we start going down the road developing something a little bit more dynamic and complex. That's been helpful. But
that's great. I mean, so you're process mapping, and then you move it into, once you've got it all figured out, when a certain action is taken, when contextual certain type of information is collected, what type of workflow or workflows plural does that trigger? And you map it out and then you build it, in a point and click way. That's beautiful. It's great.
Because when you have a lot of different individuals in different departments that need, to be able to respond on these submissions, we do have some forms that are a lot more complex and a lot more involved with different departments. This is a way to manage that and keeping that file up on Box is real simple. Once once I'm done working with you guys on getting things set up, very rarely do I ever have to contact you guys from there on. Pretty self-running.
Beautiful. Hey, just a quick, maybe if we can keep it to a couple of minutes. So I guess the last point I wanted to bring up is that you brought up the importance of scalability. Like your organization, part of the Cantel Medical Group, you're a big organization. You've got multiple divisions. So my understanding that you guys are looking at other types of solutions and or moving towards solutions like ServiceMax, and so integration and integrated capabilities, obviously, with Box and ServiceMax, and so maybe just a minute or two, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. If you how did the decision of going with us, and what are some of the signs you see where we're going to help you from a scale perspective?
Mm-hmm. Historically, our company is like I said, is kind of a late adopters to technology, but we are now we're moving in the right direction. Our parent company, we're combining all of our sister companies and all under one umbrella and under one system. We're moving to an SAP system and using Salesforce and ServiceMax to manage those processes. And one of the things was what we discovered. I think I discovered it after the fact, after we engaged with Pronto Forms, was the relationship with ServiceMax and other platforms. And we spoke to you guys out at a field service conference out in Palm Springs, California, and ServiceMax was there as well. And so we're getting excited with the fact that when we do start to roll out our new system, we'll be able to integrate it seamlessly with Pronto Forms, which is going to make dispatching service request orders out to the service techs a lot easier, and they'll be able to manage everything electronically. Currently, right now, the service request orders are all paper-based. It's printed. The service manager gives it to them. They go out to the job site and they fill out everything on paper, which then all has to be rekeyed in once it's submitted. And it just if by going to Pronto Forms and ServiceMax, it's going to decrease our time to bill down to hopefully within a day. Currently, right now, I think we're like 3 to 7 days, depending on what part of the country that we're. So it becomes, we're excited about the potential, the scalability within Pronto Forms.
Great, amazing. So Glen, you've been amazing. Your story is great. I just, again, love having customers like you come on, because it just like we provide the platform, but you guys, you make the magic by integrating it into your operations, and you've described it in a phenomenal way. So I'll pass it back, and we're going to go do a short Q&A. So I'll just jump to the Q&A slide here. So take it away.
Thank you, Mark and Glen, for your excellent insights and expertise. Before we start the Q&A, I want to remind everyone of the evaluation survey we're asking you to complete. The survey should be appearing on your screen. Your input is important because it will help us improve future webcasts. If you do not see the evaluation on your screen, please turn off your pop-up blocker. You may also access the survey by clicking the survey button near the lower right part of your screen. Now let's get to some questions. Two-part one for the first question. Can Pronto Forms provide form templates to validate the usefulness in our business? And will your services be compatible with the injury tracking application for electronic submission of injury and illness records to OSHA?
So two-part question. I'll start with the first, is that we definitely have a library of templates that you can start from. The way I like to describe this is consider, I'm sure most people are familiar with say PowerPoint, and when you start a new file, you can go from a template or from a blank canvas, or you can open an existing form. So our solution works in the exact same way. We do have templates you can work from, and you can build your own from scratch. And of course, we do have a pro services team that can work collaboratively with you and get it done. From an integration perspective, the system that you described, not familiar with it, to the degree where I would say comfortably, oh yes, fully, deeply integrated. But I will say that our solution is basically designed. We have an open REST API which allows quick and ready integration into multiple different systems, and we would be very happy, with just a little workflow overview call with one of our pro services team. They'd be able to answer that question in 5 minutes or less.
Our next question. I work for a crane rental service, so my employees are out on projects and not available to attend our weekly safety meetings. Is there a way to send them the safety topic and have them sign that they have reviewed and understand the info?
Yep, we actually have several heavy equipment manufacturers and rental companies, including in the crane space. So you'll certainly be in good hands, and we're familiar with the domain. And the answer is yes. You could every week dispatch out a form, and that form can be unique to individuals, regions, teams, you name it, where you ask them to validate, sign, and in addition to the signature, it could of course be GPS stamped, time stamped. So the answer to that is yes.
Is this only available with Apple products? We have a mixed bag of smartphones throughout our organizations.
Yeah, I would tell you that, so the answer is yes, we do support other platforms, which is really important. I think and we see it, and we know our friends at Apple appreciate this and understand it as well, is that so we do support Android, we do support Microsoft Windows devices as well. And I'll add one of the reasons that's crucial and important is although we see a growing demand on the iOS platform, some companies are making the transition and they need to roll it out on multiple different devices and then progressively over time switch and unify in one platform. So that's why it's key. But and the workflow design as well as the form, you do not have to create unique workflows or unique forms for devices on different platforms. So it's designed to be universal across platforms without any customization required.
Our next question is, where did you get the statistic that 78% were using outdated methods?
So we have a survey that we work with a publication, and this is our third year doing the survey. That survey was from 2016. The survey covers about, or I should say included, somewhere between 450 to 500. And the reason I'm saying somewhere, it's because year by year we get different numbers, but pretty close to 500 every time we do the survey. And if you go to our website, the survey is easy to find and download, and all of the details in terms of the publication we worked with, the profile of those who completed the survey, the different industries, geography, size of the businesses, it's all there. So,
any examples of consultants using this kind of technology for servicing their clients, and any copyright issues when used for client consulting?
No problem at all. We do have companies that are providing safety inspection services to different customers, and the way the solution, ProntoForms solution works, it's a per user monthly subscriber fee, and if you use it from a consulting perspective to work with various customers, by all means you can go ahead and do that. And the product is it's designed from a customization perspective for you to create unique reporting, unique folders with unique forms for specific locations or customers. So by all means, there's you pay to use the solution, and if you use it as a contractor, there's no issue with that at all. All
right. Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions, but all of today's unanswered questions will be forwarded to our speaker. Once again, I hope you take the time to fill out the evaluation survey on your screen to give us your feedback. That ends today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast. I'd like to thank Mark Scott, everyone at ProntoForms, Glen, and all of our listeners. Thank you and have a safe day.